Hello, today a problem by Uri Avner, a mate in 4 moves. You are invited to solve it, it is worth the effort. Uri Avner was a great grandmaster. He was born in 1941, died in 2014. He prepared the book of his own problems with the comments by Kjell Vidlert, and Rafi Rupin and myself, we edited it with the help of the Grandmaster Peter Gwozdjak, and the book is available at the address below the video. The problem is very nice, and now I begin to describe it. The black king is completely closed. D5 is controlled by the pawn C4. E5 and E3 are controlled by the bishop F4. F5 and F3 are controlled by the queen G4. F4 is controlled by many pieces, the pawn E3, the queen, the knight on H3 and H5. D3 is blocked by the pawn, and the pawn is pinned to the king by the bishop B1. D4 is controlled by the pawns E3 and C3. You have a battery. If the bishop was transparent, it would be a mate, but the bishop, when is moving, gives a flight or on E5 or on E3. Let's have a look at the white knight. The knight H5 is able to give check on F6, but the square is controlled by the knight D7. The knight can also give check on G3, but this is controlled by the pawn H4. The knight H3 can give check on F2 and on G5, but the two squares are controlled by black pawns H6 or G3. The queen controls F5 and F3, so she can't move without giving a flight to the black king. If you play, for example, bishop G5, king takes, and then bishop F4, you can see that the black king is obliged to come back to E4 because all the squares are controlled, E6 and F5 by the queen, F6 by the knight, and the other, as we saw before, by the pawns. So you can think that if you go and take the pawn on H6, you will be able to come back and to give mate on G5. But there is a small problem. Bishop takes on H6 check, king takes on E5, bishop comes back F4 check, king E4, knight G5, but now the rook is able to take because the white pawn disappeared, and then the line of the rook is opened. We have another try of the same kind. You have check on G3, king takes on E3, check on F4, the king comes back. This is the only choice he has, and you want to check by knight F2 because the pawn G3 disappeared, but now the bishop H7 can take because the white pawn E3 disappeared. Some tries that are not bound to the content of the problem. Knight G1. Knight to G1 is threatening bishop takes, king goes to E3, and queen mate. Also, queen takes on D7, threatening on F6 and on D3. Against this, black has a defense. Queen to G6. Queen to G6 controls F6. So now the queen to D7 will threaten only on D3, and then the rook will be able to play on D5 or the bishop on D4 to close the line D7, D3. And also the queen on G6 controls g4, and therefore bishop takes g3 will be answered by queen takes queen. Another possible try, knight g7, queen takes g7, very easy, and that's all. So you are invited to solve, and I give now immediately the solution. The solution is bishop to a2 with a long threat, bishop to g5 in order to control e7, king takes on e5, queen f4, check. The only move is king to e6, and then c5 gives mate with the long line a2 to e6, and no black piece can interfere, nor on b3, c4, or d5. What are the possible defenses that black has? The knight d7 cannot move, because otherwise you will have immediately knight to f6. The rook a5 can go to b5. Now you will have check, king takes, queen f4, king e6, and then pawn takes the rook. If the rook plays to d5, you'll have something similar. Bishop to g5, king takes e5, queen f4, king e6, and then pawn takes rook. To play the queen on the g file is of no help, because the bishop playing on g5 will in any case close the line. But if the queen goes to f5, you'll have a block of f5, and this will allow knight f2, pawn takes, and queen to g2. If the pawn goes to f5, it will be the same. So the defenses we have to check are rook or bishop to c5. As I said, knight to c5 will be followed immediately by knight f6. So if bishop c5, you see that you close the line of the rook, and then now you can play bishop takes, check, king goes to e5, bishop comes back, king comes back, and now the line of the rook is closed, and then you are able to mate by knight g5. If the rook goes to c5, now you close the line of the bishop on a7, and then you can play bishop takes on g3, check, king e3, bishop f4, switch back, king to e4, switch back, and then knight to f2 mate, because the line of the bishop is a7 is closed. Another small detail I did not say is that the threat cannot be c5. After the key, the pawn d3 is no more pinned. But if it goes giving a flight, you will have immediately bishop b1 mate. But you can think, instead of threatening bishop g5, to go, as we said, to give this kind of mate, you can think of moving immediately the pawn to c5 in order to threaten bishop g5, or bishop takes on h6, king to f5, and queen to f4 mate, because of the control of e6 by the bishop a2. But this doesn't work, because if as a threat white plays on c5, now black will be able to push the pawn on d2, and then the bishop cannot go back. It gives a flight on d5, and then there is no mate. So that's it. A very nice problem with a long thread with very nice variations, and I loved it. I hope you appreciated it, and let's meet for a next problem later. Thank you. Bye.